Did you know there's a way to switch between regular autofocus and eye autofocus without blinking an eye? I'm going to show you how to do it on today's episode of
Ask David Bergman.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. Here I am, as always, answering your photography questions. You know what to do if you've got photo questions. You go to askdavidbergman.com. Ask your question right there on the site. I just might pick it to answer here on a future show. Also, you probably know by now I'm back doing my live concert photography workshops. I'm in 25 cities around the United States this fall. You spend the day with me at a real live concert. I'm going to teach you how to photograph concerts, sports, really action of any kind. And then that night you get to shoot the show with me. It's a whole lot of fun. It's a big arena show with 15 or 20,000 people. It's a blast. I hope you'll join me this fall. Go to shootfromthepit.com to get more information about that. All right, today's show is a little bit different. I didn't actually have a question sent in about this, but this is a little tip that's going to change your life if you're a Canon shooter using one of the newer systems. I've had this conversation with a lot of my friends, and it just blows their mind when they find out about this. You probably know I am a Canon Explorer of Light, so this is specific to the newer Canon cameras like the R5, the R6, and even the 1DX Mark III. There may be other systems that have similar setups like this, so you might find this interesting even if you're not a Canon shooter, but this is really a niche thing just for those systems. Now, I recently had a conversation with my friend Steve Brazel. He's actually a very talented music photographer in his own right. He's also a radio host. He's got that great radio voice. And he does a podcast called Behind the Shot, where he interviews photographers about specific photographs. It's actually, I was on it a few years ago. Steve's a cool dude. I hope you're watching, Steve. But you can go to behindtheshot.tv and check that out. But we were talking about action photographers in general. We both shoot concerts. I used to shoot a lot of sports as well. But action photographers in general use what we call back button autofocus. Now, what that means is the autofocus on button on the back of the camera. So back here, there's a button that says on most cameras that says AF on. Using back button focus means that you use that button to activate your autofocus instead of using the shutter. I don't know who came up with the idea of combining the shutter to have it do two functions, to have it do both focus and taking a picture. It's a bad idea, whoever came up with that. I wish it had never happened. They're two completely different functions that should be separate. But once you separate them, you kind of get some advantages. Anybody who I know who shoots back button focus will tell you they'll never go back to doing it the old way. It's really the best of both worlds because as an action photographer, you generally shoot what's called servo. On the Canon system, they call it servo, which means when the autofocus is activated, previously when you would push the shutter button down halfway, but now when you push the back button, when it's activated, it's constantly staying locked on your subject. It's moving with your subject. So if it locks on your subject and then it's going to stay with them, they're going to be in focus the whole time. And then you can go ahead and take pictures whenever you want, and they're going to be in focus. Now, I say it's the best of both worlds because if you do prefer to photograph something in the one-shot mode where the focus gets locked and it doesn't move, all you have to do is lift your thumb off that back button. So think of it this way. Focus on when you're actively pushing down the thumb. Focus is off when it's lifted off. It really makes it simple. If you want to shoot something off-center, what you would do is you put the subject in the center or wherever your focus point is, push down on that thumb button, and then let go, and then basically your focus is locked. You can recompose and then take pictures all day long, and your focus is not going to move until you push that thumb button down again. Shooting back button focus is really good for pre-focus because while your subject is moving around and you're not taking pictures, by keeping your thumb down on that button, you're going to follow your subject and they're going to be in focus the whole time. So then when you want to take a picture very quickly, something's about to happen, there's no delay, right? You're already seeing it in focus without having to half press that button down. That's a huge pain to keep that button half pressed down, and then you don't want to go too far and take a picture by accident, right? Or if you don't have your finger on it, once you push that button, it takes a little bit of a second for that focus to find what you're trying to focus on. Hopefully you got it in the right spot, and then you take the picture. So if you keep it in focus by using that thumb button the whole time, then you can just shoot whenever you want. You can really helps you to anticipate and react faster when shooting any kind of action or anything moving. So here's the thing: the newer cameras like this is the R5. This is Canon R5 with the grip on the bottom. It's the 15 to 35 2.8 lens, RF lens, and then on top here, if you're wondering, this is the Atomos Ninja. I think it's I don't remember which model it is. It's an old model, but I'm using that only so that I can record what I'm seeing through the camera so I can show you guys what it looks like. So that's normally not something I would shoot with when I'm not doing these videos. So a camera like this has the newest AF eye autofocus technology, which is incredibly fast. It works really, really well, and it can detect a person's eye, their face. If it can't see an eye, it's going to go to the face or the head, and it can even go to the body. If somebody's wearing a helmet or a hat, it's still going to pick up their head or their body. It really works incredibly well. And it's funny because, for people like me who've been shooting a long time without something like that, it's a little like giving up some control, which is hard, because to let the camera do its thing and determine where to focus is hard. It's like kind of like driving kind of like it being in a self-driving car, where you sort of have to keep your hands right in front, right around the wheel for a while, and then as you get used to it, you can maybe put your hands down a little bit. But it takes a little while to trust the technology that it's going to do the right thing. This eye autofocus system in this Canon camera works incredibly well. So it's great for sports and for concerts, really anything that's moving, even if it's just your kids in the backyard, whatever it is. So the problem is, when you're using that eye autofocus and you're in servo mode, and then you want to shoot something else, like maybe in a concert situation, maybe you want to pan down and photograph the guitar player's hands on the guitar, something where there's no face, right? Any other kind of inanimate object. What you need to do is you need to turn off that eye autofocus setting and go back into regular autofocus. So you need to go into the menus, switch it over, and then shoot. By then the moment is probably gone, and then you have to remember to switch it back to turn the eye AF back on. So I have found a solution that most people, even the people using the top of the line stuff, don't even know exists. What it revolves around is customizing your buttons. So when you go in your menus here, there is a menu setting called Customize Buttons. And you may know that you can change the function of just about every button on this camera. So you can set it up to do the specific things that you want to do. There are so many things you can do. But we're just going to talk about this one today. Now, first of all, to start setting up for back button autofocus in the first place, you're already shooting in servo mode, right? That's a different setting in the camera. We're already on servo. But the first thing you have to do, you go into Customize Buttons, and you have all these options, right? So the ones on the left are when you're shooting stills, and the one on the right are when you're shooting video. So you can actually have different settings for video and for stills. But for stills is all we're talking about today. This top one here is the shutter button. So when you go in there, by default, it is set up for metering and AF start. And what that means is metering, it just means that the meter comes on in the camera, the exposure meter, right? So that's really a non-issue. But the AF start is what we're concerned about. So by default, the shutter button does activate the autofocus. So we want to turn that off. So all you do is go to metering start only. So by doing that, you're taking the autofocus off of the shutter button. So that's the way it works. Now, you do that, and then you're going to go down to the AF on setting. That's the button on the back by your thumb. By default, that is already set as metering and AF start. That's what we want. We absolutely want it there. It's going to activate the autofocus. You could set it for other things if you want, but this is how I would have it set up. So that's already in the right place. Now, something else I do when I'm shooting normally, what I will do is, you can see where my focus points are. I like to, just a sidebar, I like to have them a little bit above center, just because that's usually, if I'm photographing a face, that's usually about where the eyes are going to be. So that's just my own personal preference. If you like it in the center, depending on what you shoot, that's fine. But I use this AF expanded area as my selection. You can have a really tiny little point. You could use something like this, or you can expand your AF points a little bit. I like this one. They have these zones where the camera kind of decides what it wants to focus on. I don't use those at all. I use this expanded AF area with the 8 little helper points around it. So that's what I use, right? So the way the camera's set up right now, when I press the autofocus button on the back, it's going to activate that point, and that's how I'm set up. If I want to photograph something off center, again, I'm going to focus on it, then recompose, and take the picture. That's how I've shot for years. It works for me really well. I've had no problems with that. I can get my pictures in focus, no problem. So something else that I've always done for years is right next to that AF on button, there's another button that's a little star right next to it, right here. They're like a ½ inch apart. That little star button, I don't use it really for anything else. I don't have it set for any other functions. So what I've always done is I've set that star button for the same exact thing that I have AF on set for, which is metering and AF start. Why? Well, simply, sometimes I press the wrong button, right? If I'm if I'm working quickly and I just want to mash down a button and have it focus, sometimes I press that button by accident. But for the most part, I know that I can choose either one of those buttons and I don't really worry about it. But now, we have eye autofocus. Wouldn't it be cool if we can make that star button activate eye autofocus? Well, my friends, I'm here to tell you that you can do it. And this is how. So you go back into your menus, customize buttons. Let's go to the star button. This is where we set up what that star button is going to do. Now, when you go in there, first thing we want to do is, like I said, switch it over to metering and AF start. That is so it has the same functionality as the AF on button. But then there's another little thing down in the bottom left. It actually says info detail set. And what that means is if you press the info button on the back of your camera, it's going to bring up a detail set. This is like a sort of like a hidden menu. It's not hidden, but nobody sees this. Nobody really knows this is here. I didn't know it was here in the beginning until I noticed it and tried to figure out what it was. And what that does, it brings up this menu. Now, this is the R5, so it may be a little bit different on other cameras, but on the R5, there are 3 different settings that you can do in here. Now, keep in mind, this is only when you're pressing the star button. This doesn't affect anything else in the camera. We're in the menu to just be what the, we're telling it what I want it to do when I press the star button. So in there, if we go back in, and right, I'm forgetting the info button. There's info. We have 3 settings. Now, the first one is AF operation. Now, this gives you the choice. You can have the star button change it from one shot or servo, or you can have it maintain the current setting. I'm already in servo. I always shoot in servo 100% of the time, 99.9% of the time. So I'm going to just have it on maintain current setting. Now, the only time I would ever shoot in one shot, and I've done this before, if I'm in a very dark room and I'm using a speed light on camera usually, and I want to activate the AF assist beam on the speed light, that little red light to help me focus in a pitch black room, you have to be on one shot to do that, because servo, if your subject's moving around and your focus is moving, that red light's not going to help you because it's going to focus, and by the time you take the picture, the person's going to have moved. So you have to go into one shot mode to do that. So I can pretty quickly change to one shot in the menus, but if I did a lot of this kind of work, if you guys do a lot of that kind of work, then you might want to set this to one shot and have that star button activate. You're still going to be AF on, but also it'll switch to one-shot mode, which is super cool. So you can very quickly choose which one you want. But that's not what we're doing today, so I'm going to leave that on maintain current setting. The third setting here is servo AF characteristics, and those are your case modes, your different autofocus case modes. Since the R5 came out, I've been using auto. It works really, really well. I've had no problem with that. If you're really finicky about your case modes and you want to go in there and have your star button also change your case mode, you can do that here. Again, I'm going to leave this on maintain current setting. Now, the middle setting, AF method, this is where the magic happens. You can go in there, and now you can select any of these other focus areas to change to when you're pressing the star button. So if you wanted to go to zone AF or whatever, or single point, tiny little point, but in our case, we're going to go to face tracking, right? By setting that on face tracking, now we have the star button set to activate the autofocus, just like the AF on button does, right? But when we push that button, it's going to switch from the AF expanded focus to face tracking. So I'll show you exactly how this works. Let's make sure I've got it all set, and we can go out of here. I've got a picture here on a computer in front of me, and this is a picture of Erica that I shot a few months ago. Thank you, Erica, for posing for me here yet again today. And if I was photographing her in the old days of like a year ago, what I would do is I would push my AF on button, and that's, you can see when it changes to blue, that's because I'm pushing the AF on button and it's now in focus. If I move back a little bit, it's going to keep her in focus. If I move in, it's going to keep her in focus. So that is going to focus on her eye, which is what I want to focus on. And then I can let go, I could recompose and take pictures. That's how I would normally do it. That works pretty well. But now what I can do is I can be recomposed. I can compose the image however I want. And by simply moving my thumb over to that star button, boom. Now it's going to pick up her eye, and I can move all around, no problem. It's going to stay right on her eye, and I can shoot whenever I want with absolutely no problem by simply just sliding my thumb over there. Now, then when I want to come over here and I've got these cameras sitting here, if I'm on face detection and I try to shoot these cameras, it doesn't know what to do. It doesn't see a face. It's trying to pick up, I guess, whatever's closest to the camera, but I don't want to do that. I want to select, let's say, the Canon logo. So all I have to do is move my thumb back to my AF on button, put it over the Canon logo, just like I've done for years. Focus, recompose, and then I can shoot all day long. I can focus here, shoot, focus here, shoot, no problem, right? And then come back to Erica, do IAF, and there we go. No problem. So this is a game changer. Now, you could switch those two buttons around if you prefer it the other way, if you want the eye on the one button, you know, on the AF on button, and the non-eye on the other button. But here's the thing to think about with that. You won't actually see the AF expanded area boxes until you actually push down the star button. If that activates that mode, you won't see that box. You don't really know exactly where it is until you push that star button down. So I prefer it the other way. I prefer to have the default mode the way I've always shot with that AF expanded area. I think that works much better. And then when I want to activate the IAF, all I have to do is push that star button when needed, right? And the rest of the time, I'm just on the normal focus mode. Whichever way you do it, it really is just going to become muscle memory after a little while, and you can move your thumb back and forth as needed without even thinking about it. That's really the key. It's what I try to teach in my workshops, is you want to get your head out of the camera and not be thinking about the gear and really paying attention to what's happening in front of your lens so you don't miss those great moments. So I hope you find that tip helpful. For me, it really was a game changer. I know that's a cliche that people use all the time. This really does change everything and makes it so much easier and so much more practical to use eye-autofocus if I know that I can switch out of it very quickly whenever I need it. So what do you guys do? Are you a Canon shooter? Are you going to use this? Is this going to be helpful for you? If you're using another camera brand, tell me how you switch from the IAF if your camera has that. Is there a good way to do it? I really want to know how it's done in other systems, so help me out with that. Let me know in the comments below. We'll have a discussion about it. Remember, shootfromthepit.com is my live concert workshops. I hope you'll join me this fall. I'm all around the United States. I hope you're already a subscriber to the Adorama YouTube channel. If not, go ahead and click that button down below. Use that little bell icon. You'll be notified as soon as new shows come out all week long. And I am back here every Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern, with a brand new question. Next week, we'll go back to more of the normal format. I appreciate you guys being here. I'll see you back here next time, right here on Ask David Bergman.